Well, Shabbat Shalom to everyone. A good Sabbath, a good morning to you. This is Bill Bullock coming to you live from the Biblical Lifestyle Center in Texarkana, Texas, USA. It is so good to be with you today. Thank you for inviting me to come into your homes or into your smartphones or into your computers or into your lives in general. We just thank you that we get a chance to share with you on this beautiful Sabbath day the mysteries, the wonders, the healing, the strengthening energy, the inspiration, the empowerment of the Holy One's wisdom, His Torah that He's given us to teach us how to live life, live it well, live it effectively, and have the impact upon the world that He designed us to have. Not to fail at our essential mission, but instead to walk in His ways and model to the world His goodness, His shalom, His peace, His joy, His good favor, His goodwill to all men. Well, may that be your hunger, may that be your desire, may that overriding passion take over all the other facets of your life to where what you really become all about, what we all really become all about, is fulfilling the mission of our King, being His sons and daughters. If you're joining with us, please drop us a note. Let us know who you are, where you're listening or tuning in from. And if you have any comments, prayer requests, discussion, things you want to talk about next time, I do listen and do read all those comments. Blessings to all of you from all over the world, from all nations, from all communities, from all households. May the shalom of the Holy One be upon you this Sabbath. We get a chance today to discuss the parsha that's known as Tetze. Two Hebrew words that begin basically the whole parsha, and that's the way these parshas get named. Of course, they get named for the first two main words, and the first two main word, or first word in some situations, but the first two words in this situation. And the first one is Tetze, two Hebrew words, and they basically are usually described to mean when you go out, when you go out. Literally, it would mean if and when you branch out, or when you expand from where you are to another place. When you change geography, whenever you change latitude and longitude, coordinates, and you impact a different world, when you do that, and that's the rest of the parsha is about how to successfully navigate when you're out of your comfort zone, when you're out of your normal, where you can control your environment, and you find out you're in another world where you can't control the environment. You can't control your friends, your neighbors. You can't control your enemies. You can't even really, in many situations, control yourself unless you have disciplined yourself by training in the Torah, training in the ways, the wisdom protocols of the Creator of the universe. And so when you go out, when you go out, and we will indeed go out. Because, you see, this lesson of the Torah in general, and Parsha Tetze in particular, is that we are not called to live in a idealistic bubble. We're not called to live in an ivory tower. We're not called to live in a utopia of any variety. We are called to live in a really tough world with really tough people, really dysfunctional, really broken people, broken families, with broken institutions, with deceived leaders, with ethnocentric hatred, with all sorts of things that we're going to have to deal with. These are the biggest problems of mankind. And why should we think that we would not be sent into these situations to bring some level of shalom and some level of healing, some sense of hope to them? So we're not called to live and hide in a safe bubble, nor are we to imagine that we can control anyone or anything in the outside world. We cannot do it by control. We must affect the world, impact the world, instead according to the protocols of the King. The humility, the compassion, the kindness, the love, the wisdom, the gentleness, the various things that the Holy One has designed into our lives to be able to deal effectively with very difficult situations. The message of Moshe in the whole book of Deuteronomy Devarim, as it is known in its original Hebrew, is that there is a people that is being called to arise. I like to say it, there's a people arising. We have been raised up, we, the covenant sons and daughters of Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, the ones who have been enjoined from other nations as well to these sons of Yaakov, Yitzhak, and Abraham. These have been raised up, or being raised up at such a time as this, difficult times in the world, to prepare for the glorious King's way, to open up his passageway to his coming, and to lay the foundations of his soon and coming kingdom. It's a glorious mission. It is a very aggressive, very difficult to imagine in the natural flesh. But in the awakening of the Spirit that He is doing in our lives, it should not be such a big surprise. We are called to this. We are called to do it humbly. We are called to do it wisely. We're called to be wise as serpents, harmless as doves, but we are to do what we're called to do. And what is that? Our assignment is to envision, first of all, and grab the passion for it, and then to begin to build piece by piece, and begin to do the necessary things to maintain, and then to administrate and model to the world what? A beautiful, fruitful, joyful, peaceful, kingdom of heaven-scented society. The world has not seen it yet. The religion does not give it to it. Philosophy does not give it to it. Ideology does not give it to it. Freedom movements, social justice movements do not give it to it. What is called is the ways of the Holy One to bring down this kingdom of heaven-scented society. It is beautiful, fruitful, joyful, and peaceful. It is supposed to be a society that will not just inspire for a speech by virtue of giving a speech till we quit talking, or even for a generation or two, but that is called to endure forever. We have been called to build this society and expand it outward in all directions. Hence the words ki Tetze. When you go out, when you expand, when you launch out. We are called to expand this kingdom of heaven-scented society outward from our own selves and our own hearts and our own minds, outward into our families, our households, our neighborhoods, our marketplaces, all the areas that we'll touch, even when we deal with internet, through the internet connections that we have, the online connections, through social media if necessary, whatever means we have of going out, of Tetze, you go out. Whenever we do that, then we're called to expand this kingdom of heaven in society. Little bit by little bit, a scent, a fragrance, a touch, a feel, a taste of what it might be. We are to go into all the cities and all the villages and all the shtetls and all the spheres of influence in which we will ever pass. And we are to go into the highest seats of learning. We are going to the highest thrones of our government, of anyone's government. We're going to the furthest borders of the nation. We are to go, and ultimately we are to expand this kingdom to the four corners of the earth. And we don't have to do this alone, but we don't have the right to demand that the Holy One do it alone either. We are His servants. We are His sons. This brings us to the Haftarah of the week. We are in the fourth week of the consolation, as it's called, as we always meditate on Parsha ki Tetze in connection with this Haftarah, Isaiah 54, 1 through 11. And I'll give you a little hint of it. It's going to say, Rone achara lo yalada. Sing, rejoice, barren woman, lo yalada, who has not conceived. Pitchi Arina v'zahali lo chala. Break into celebratory singing and cry aloud, you who have not experienced labor. Ki rabim b'nei shomema. For many more numerous are the children of the desolate, abandoned, and sheltered one, mi b'nei ve'ula, than the children of the married woman. Amar Adonai, says the Holy One. And search out, stretch out, and extend and expand. Enlarge the place of your tent. And stretch out the curtains of your dwelling. Yatu el tak sholchi. Don't be hesitant. Don't hesitate. Ha'ariki metariyek. Stretch out your cords, your guy wires. Vetodayek kaziki. and set your tent pegs. Ki yamin usmol tifrotzi, for you will expand to the right and to the left. Vezaret goyim yirash, and your seed will possess the nations as an inheritance. The arim neshmot yoshivu, and the desolate cities will be inhabited. Al tiri ki lo tevoshi, have no fear or reluctance or hesitation, for you will not be disappointed. The al tekalmi ki lo tachpiri, nor will you be confounded, nor will you be ashamed. Ki voshet alumayik tishkaki, for you will forget the humiliation of your youth. The charpat amonetaik lo tizkeri ud, and the despair of your widowhood you will remember no more. This idea of getting ready to expand, being poised on the brink of a great expansion, a great growth, a great level of influence and impact that we are called to have upon the world. I hope it's swelling over you, it's washing over you now. The message of Moshe, the message of the one he represents, the Holy One, is telling you, you are about ready to go in and expand your influence, but do it wisely. So going out into the world, going into the dark places of the world, going into the broken situations, the dysfunctional institutions and conventions and systems of the world, this is our honor and this is our joy. But it is also our solemn duty. It is why we were born. It is why we were sought out by the Holy One and redeemed. It is why we were delivered from bondages. It was why we've been hidden in the wilderness and trained over these past years. It is why we're now being brought forth. This is the mission. We do not by any means have to do it alone, but we do not have the right to demand that he do it alone either. We are his covenant partners. Beloved, we are his co-laborers. We are his appointed ambassadors. We are his servants. We are his confidants. And thank heaven, we are his friends. He shares with us his plans. He shares with us his wisdom. He shares with us his strategies. He shares with us his energy and his shalom. The Holy One's plan requires us as Bnei Israel to function as a city set on a hill. A city set on a hill. Are you ready to do that? Are you ready to be in full view, exposed as it were, for all to see, a model placed on a shelf to be seen and to be functional at the same time, a place and a people of inspiring wisdom, of humility, of kindness, of compassion, of mercy, of joy, of shalom, of hope, and of emunah, of trust that is based upon having a life force alive in us that we are called and is our pleasure to protect and preserve. Now, we are called in this regard to engage with and change the atmosphere of every piece of terra firma where our feet will tread. We're not here to conquer the world like some conquistador group. We're not here to judge the world for its sin. We're not here to condemn it for its immorality or its injustice. We are here to engage the world with the King's countenance. We are here to release the sweet fragrance of his mercies. We are here to pour pure water and release healing energy from his words. Use that as our source material. We are here to release the pleasantness of our King's heart and his goodwill toward men. We are here to release problem-solving, solution-minded, future-focused wisdom from his internal wisdom, brilliance. Now, we are in the process, in the midst of, our context is that we're in the process of Moshe giving a critical strategic briefing session. He is instructing us in how to effectively establish and maintain first the command center of Israel, Eretz Israel, and starting in Jerusalem, and then throughout the nations to bring the campaign of the kingdom of heaven into the earth. Through employing a matrix of carefully chosen hypotheticals that I call narrow road nuances, Moshe is giving us a substantive illustration, or actually substantive illustrations in numerous forms, of what a kingdom of heaven sent into society would look like in real time. When faced with real people's issues, when faced with real challenges, when faced with all the things that make the world fail and go into a tizzy and go into drama and go into trauma and go into rebellion and revolution and hatred and ethnic brokenness and all sorts of things that happen. Well, how not to do that? Because he's going through and going to give us a series of hypotheticals that I call narrow road nuances as to what to do. What we're going to do is go on basically a fascinating theoretical hypothetical excursion, a journey, as it were. This journey down the narrow road that the Holy One's Torah will take us down will take us into some places that will wilt us, it will seem. We would not want to go there, but this is where the Holy One will take us, because he's taking his light into the darkest areas of the world and of the human population. There will be challenges on this way. He doesn't want to sugarcoat it. He doesn't want us to think we're going into a rose garden. He wants us to know that the place that the Holy One is taking us along this Torah pathway, this journey he's taking us, will be a place of great challenge, of danger for that matter, and of problems, relational, financial, social, every kind, spiritual, that will cross a rabbi's eyes. So, as Tetze would say from Fiddler on the Roof, get ready to face problems and deal with them that would cross a rabbi's eyes. He's going to lay before us, Moshe that is going to lay behind us a hypothetical but all too real situation after hypothetical but all too real situation after another, one after another, to teach us how to think and to respond like the Holy One thinks and responds to human drama and trauma and failure, instead of how fleshly and pseudo-intellectual man and cultures and ethnicities tend to think about and respond to such problematic situations. Moshe knows that we need intense deprogramming. We are broken like the rest of the world. We have the same flesh, nephesh, mind, will, and emotion deceptions and conflicts. We have the same instincts and hormones. We have the same issues of lust of flesh. We have the same issues of fear, of anger, of pride. We deal with the same issues of covetousness and envy and jealousy that the rest of the world does. And so he knows we need intense deprogramming and retraining. We need disciplines if we're going to become the long-term solution. And if we're going to focus on long-term solutions and redemption and restoration and light of the world production, if that's what's going to be our focus, as opposed to knee-jerk reactions and that knee-jerk reaction motivated people will do. Well, there's enough of that in the world already. There are two basic themes. If you want to add up all the messages of Deuteronomy 21:10 through 25:19, which is known as Parsha Tetze, there are basically two themes that override. And the first of these themes, beloved, is the message that we are to purge in English it says evil, from our midst. From our midst, from within us, and from around us. We have this responsibility to be alert and aware to the fact that there is this thing. Now, again, in English it's called evil. The Hebrew word is ra. And let me suggest to you that perhaps ra does not mean evil in a moral sense as we think of it in the Western world. Ra, the Hebrew word ra, remember the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of ra and of tov, the ra of good and evil, has been a confusion for us all along. Ra basically means human will independent of the Creator. What we think is right, what we think would feel good, what we think would benefit us, what we think would be pleasurable or pleasant or avoid pain or discomfort or challenge. Whatever, that is Ra. And so we are called to purge the Ra from within us and in our midst. That's the first theme. And everything you're going to read from this point forward in Parsha Tetze has that as one of its main themes. Always look at it and wonder, what is the Ra? within me and around me here? What is the self-interest independent of the Holy One? How would I act if I just ignored the Holy One? As a matter of fact, rebelled against the Holy One. How would I act? And as opposed to that, then contrast. Then if I'd been changed and decided to go the Holy One's way, how would I act instead? What would I do? How would I cure, redeem, heal, restore, make tikkun for the problems? That's issue number one. Purge the ra from your midst. The second main theme is do not hide or conceal yourself. You'll see these words repeated regularly, and sometimes they're suggested even if they're not actually stated. Do not hide yourself. Do not conceal yourself. We are to be conspicuous. We are to be present, and our presence is to be felt and known. We are not to just ignore things around us, and yet we are not to become caught up in the drama aspects of them, or the trauma aspects of them, or the dysfunction aspects of them. We are supposed to bring solutions. We're not to hide ourselves. The world is in desperate need of someone to come forth with a better idea, with a better plan, and with a cool, calm, collected, joyful, hopeful message that will bring about a breaking free from the bondage of drama and trauma and dysfunction in this process. So we're called to be ambassadors of and lay the foundation of the kingdom of heaven in society. I want to talk about, last week we discussed how this works in the form of infrastructure. Moshe talked about in Parsha Shoftim, that there would be the way in which we will approach problems will be through infrastructure and through due process. We will not use the same protocols of dispute resolution and conflict resolution that the world does. We will have our own infrastructure system. I talked about the Beit Din, the three wise, schooled in Torah, calm, confident, and good reputation men or persons who will have on our, as I call it, our speed dial, who will be, before we get angry, before we get offended, before we get caught up in what's going on in the world and what the arguments are going on and the disputes are going on and the injustices that are happening, and getting all emotional or all pseudo-intellectual or all up in our opinions about that, we will pass this through our Beit Din, our three wise souls. Now that we talk more about, we talk about the king. We talk about each area, each sphere of influence that we enter, in the spiritual or in the natural realm. We will have a protocol of infrastructure that we will not will not allow ourselves to catch up the way the world does in its emotions and its pseudo-intellectual and its opinions and its conflicts and its trauma and its trauma. So, with that being in mind, we're going to move forward. The Holy One. I want to talk about the seasons and how in Psalm 27, which is our psalm for the season of Elul, the month of Elul, the psalm for the season of comfort, it starts like this. Psalm 27:1 begins, "The Holy One is my light, Ori, and Yishi, he is my deliverance. Whom shall I fear?" If we start with that, that's a good start. That's Psalm 27. The Holy One, then, the next one. The Holy One is the stronghold of my life, the source of my strength, the source of my protection. Then of whom shall I be afraid? And then it goes further. When the wicked, the Rasha, those who are caught up in Ra, caught up in this idea of their own will, their own ways, come against me. When the Rasha comes against me, Rashaim come against me, to consume my flesh, when my enemies and my foes come, they will stumble and fall, the psalmist says. Though an army encamp against me, my heart will not fear. Though war rise against me, even in that will I be confident. For in the time of trouble, he will hide me in his pavilion. We are not to hide ourselves. Let him hide us. In the time of trouble, he will hide me in his pavilion, his tabernacle, his mikdash. Let me make sure in his sukkah. He will hide me in his sukkah. In the secret place of his tabernacle, he will conceal me. He will set me high up on a rock, and my head will be lifted up above my enemies. I will not see the world, see the situation the way they do. I will have a higher perspective based upon being safe in his pavilion. Now, this is the idea of going forth. When we go forth, when we go into the world, these things will have to happen. All right, I want to move a little further and faster. Let's do our call to worship, and we'll get started with Parsha Tetze. Baruch hu Adonai Hamvorak. Baruch Adonai Hamvorak leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bakar banu mikol ha'amin. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah. Now open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see the wondrous things in your Torah. For we are but strangers in the earth, so do not hide your commandments from us. The closing lines of Parsha Shoftim last week, everything's done in context. We don't pick and choose verses out of context. Keeping up with the context, here's what it was said at the end of Deuteronomy 21:9. You will put away the guilt of innocent blood. You will put away the guilt of innocent blood. Actually, it says you will put away the innocent blood, and we assume the word guilt. Dam nachi in Hebrew. You will put away the innocent blood from among you when you do what is yashar, straight, according to plan, according to spec. When you go do what is plumb, when you do what is level, then you will put away the innocent blood from you. And when you do what is yashar in the eyes of the Holy One. All right, and he says this idea of innocent blood. We will impact the world. We will impact the innocence of this world, the innocents, plural, of this world, the children, the widows, the foreigners, the ones who are just not in a position to be able to help themselves right now. We will impact them. Now let us not shed their blood. Let us not make their condition, their situation worse. Let us not wound and hinder them. Let us bring forth life. That's how it ended last week. Opening lines of Parsha Tetze are as follows. Tetze lemelchama al oiveka. In English, basically it would say, when you go out, extend yourself, branch out to make war on your enemy. When you go out, extend yourself, branch out to make war on your enemy. There's some key words, dynamite, devarim in that passage. War, enemy, war, enemy. Do you hear what I'm saying here? Back to Psalm 27. Though an enemy come against me, I will not fear. The Lord is my light and my yeshit, my salvation, my deliverance. Whom shall I fear? Whom shall I be afraid? So when you go out, extend yourself, branch out to make war on your enemy. And then it goes on. And the Holy One entrusts them into your hands. In other words, you receive a victory because the Holy One has ordained for you to take some level of victory over these enemies that are made war. And then it goes on. Vishavita shivyo. And you capture captives. You take captive people. V'ra'ivat b'shivya eshet yafat to'ar. And you see among these captives a beautiful, shapely, formally woman. V'chashakta ba v'lachakta lech l'isha. And you desire her. And you would take her for a wife. Okay, so we're getting war, enemies, captives, capturing victory. We're getting a beautiful, shapely woman that will do something to our senses, our emotions, our instincts, our hormones, and there will be a desire comes forth. This is on this road, this journey that we're going to take. He's saying this is one of the things you'll have to navigate when you deal with war. War does things to people. Having enemies, facing enemies does things to people. It creates a sense of entitlement, a sense of need of the fleshly things. And then you capture captives and you have control, authority over them. And you can do what you want. How would the world handle that? How would the world handle war? How would the deceived, propaganda-crazed nations handle dealing with enemies? And when they're given into your hands, how would you handle captives? How would you handle a beautiful, shapely woman that is fully, completely vulnerable to you? What would you let yourself do? What would the nations do? What has been always the history of conquering armies who are not tied to the Holy One at all? How do they behave? How do they act toward this person who is now dependent upon their kindness or whatever they do? And then what do you do with your own desires, your own urges, your own hormones that are flowing within you? How do you control? How do you discipline them? How do you subject them where you're not raw, you're not operating in raw, you're purging the raw from within you? And you have to have a protocol to do that, because that does not happen naturally. We can't will it into being. We must follow the king's protocols. That's what Parsha Tetze is all about. Learning to follow the king's protocols when we face situations that the world has handled really badly, that the nations, the ethnicities, the cultures of this world do not have an answer for, that cause all sorts of grief and trouble, drama and trauma, failure and catastrophe, and not letting that happen to us, because we have this wonderful, wise king teaching us his protocols of self-governance, self-protection, self-defense. So I want to go on then to talk about what happens, what does Moshe want us to see looking down the road on this journey he wants to take us on, this hypothetical journey. He's given us a hypothetical war that we're going to face. We're really not at war. We're at peace on the mountain as he teaches these things. The nation of Bnei Israel is at peace. On the plains of Moab, no one's attacking us. We're not attacking anybody. We're looking across the Jordan River, that beautiful land that we're going to go in and possess as being our base of operations, the kingdom command center that we're to build there. We're not in the war mode. So he takes us on a journey and a hypothetical and says war. Now, out of war, everything else will come. Out of the sense of having enemies and being at war with our enemies, everything will happen. And there will be emotions, and there will be passions, and there will be offenses, and there will be feelings, and there will be instincts arise, and there will be all sorts of self-obsessed and culture-obsessed and ethnicity-obsessed and nation-state-obsessed thoughts that will come into our minds. We must learn how not to respond to them the way of the world, or else we'll repeat the world's mistakes. There is a people arising who will even conduct warfare and deal with enemies and its own lusts and appetites honorably. There's a people arising who will overcome these fleshly things and these pseudo-intellectual challenges and snares and bloodlust even. In addition, material possessions and spoil lust through faithfully following the instructions of the Master in the Torah. All right. The second thing we'll see quickly is that these things that attract us or distract us or seduce us or offend us will have their impact upon our families, upon our marriages. And then it'll put a stress upon our households and our children. And there will be conflicts between parents and children, and parents, and different groups of family members that are in. We'll see this take place in our parsha as well. One of the things about do not hide yourself is do not mix yourself. Do not adulterate yourself. Do not mix things that don't belong together. Keep things separate from the way you dress, and not just the way you dress, but the way you adorn yourself and carry yourself. Don't do it, if you're a man, for instance, don't do it like you're a woman. If you're a woman, don't do it like you're a man. Don't use the things of the other gender, because you're confusing the world. You're misreading. You're giving mixed messages to the world. Don't give a mixed message. Part of not hiding yourself from the issues of the world. So, the people of the covenant are not to let anger, woundedness, offense, or bitterness between former friends, lovers, spouses, acquaintances destroy the future of the nation, or in a marriage, or in a family, the children of the union. We're going to talk about the child who is of the unloved mother, and there is a child of a loved woman and a child of an unloved woman, and he says, now don't let this. You must show the world that we do not follow their ways of treating a child differently based upon who its mother is. We learn these lessons hopefully from Yaakov's story with Rachel and Leah. But the kingdom of heaven is full of situations where we can choose a child based upon what we feel about the child's mother or father. And we are not to do that. We are not to judge the child by the mother or the father, or have our affections moved toward the child, or our intentions moved toward the child based upon who the mother or the father or the bloodline may be. Now, mistakes of passion and lust in one generation are not to negate bloodline inheritance. In the next, we see this of the issue of the sons of the unloved mother. There are things that also we will confront that will stir up our material urges. Now, Moshe uses the example or the hypothetical of you find your brother's lost sheep, ox, or garment. You come across situations where you could take advantage, you could take something, and no one's looking, and the world just takes it. The world just says, finders, keepers, losers, weepers, I've got it. And so the Holy One says, no, there's a different protocol. We're not finding anything right now. Our brother hasn't lost anything yet, but this is a hypothetical situation the Holy One is giving to us to teach us how to handle our material instincts and urges, our craving to possess, to acquire, to control physical, tangible things. This is the love of mammon, as Yeshua talked about so often. The idea of having stuff and controlling, and then being jealous of other people's stuff, and then being overprotective of our stuff, and yet then not stewarding the stuff that we have, thinking instead we should have somebody else's things anyway. So the Creator's grand plan for the redemption of mankind and for the restoration of His creation involves our active engagement in recognizing, seeking after, going to, and taking responsibility for that which is lost in this world. Even if it's never going to be ours, there are layers of responsibility, covenant responsibility, protocol assigned that are individual and communal. And the idea is we are not to take advantage of that which would make us feel, we think we make it feel happy because we got something material. Material things never make you happy. Now, that is some of the issues that we could talk about, but I want to go a little further. The whole issue of purging the evil from the ra from among you. In Hebrew, it's lachem ba uviarta hara mikirveka. Lechem ba uviarta hara mikirveka. You are to put away, purge the ra from within you. Now, this theme is not new to Parsha Tetze. It was actually introduced in previous parshas of Deuteronomy, and specifically in Deuteronomy 13:5. The story, the context there was an instruction as to what to do with a false prophet. If we allow false revelation streams to enter into and infect us and our viewpoints, then what happens is we realize that it has activated something inside of us, some raw inside of us. We want something that is not what the Holy One has provided to us, whether it be a cult, whether it be idolatry, whether it be a sense of I don't know, the whole idea of the prosperity message. Whatever it is we think we want, it activates something fleshly, pseudo-intellectual in us and keeps us from the mission. We must purge the raw from within us. And the next one is from last week. We have Deuteronomy 17:7. And he mentions the same language, lechem ba uviarta hara mikerveka. You are to put away, purge the evil, the raw from within you. The context of 17:7 was 2 or more witnesses, due process instructions. You are not to convict anybody, to condemn anybody, to form an opinion negatively about anybody on the basis of anything less than 2 or more witnesses. Because you see, what happens if you just hear stories or tales, it activates the raw in you. It activates the self-will in you. You want to respond in a knee-jerk reaction of the flesh. So he says, don't do that. You must follow the kingdom's protocols of due process before you even formulate an opinion. This is foreign to the world. The world wants to grab the opinion and loves their opinions and then wants to judge everybody based upon their opinions. He says, no. We must have a different way. The kingdom of heaven must be, its people must do things differently. Also, 17:13 of Deuteronomy. The Holy One Moshe used the same language. Lechem ba uviarta hara mikerveka. You are to put away, purge the raw from among you, in connection with instructions about a man who refuses to shema and follow the instructions and the guidance of either a Kohen, a priest, or a shofet, a judge, of the community. In other words, if someone is that rebellious, there's something in them. There's some raw in them that they're not purging, because the Holy One's words and the Holy One's appointed people should have an effect on you. And thinking independent of them in that regard requires you to research what is the raw in me that makes me want to ignore, to refuse to listen to refuse to follow the guidance of a Kohen, Shofet. Deuteronomy 19:19 also the same phrase was used in connection then with instructions about a false or biased witness. We need to be careful who we listen to, whose stories, whose testimony we will consider listening to. The world loves to put up a scandal. The media potentially promotes these things. And they use interested witnesses with a bone to pick, with a dog in the fight, or with just a reason, motivation to make stuff up. So be careful who you listen to. I mean, what is the raw that makes us want to listen to stuff because it's scandalous, that wants to listen to stuff because it would cause the mighty to fall, or kind of go along with our side or our position on a certain matter. So we'll listen to any old witness who will say any old thing. Boy, we spent years in America going through this process over the past 7 or 8 years. Now, this idea of witnesses that are not credible, that don't have 2 or more witnesses there, and they're not basing their things on actual observation, but mere on emotion and feeling of what they want or what their agenda may be. Then Deuteronomy 24:7, we're going to read about it in connection, the same message. You are to put away the raw from among you, in connection with instructions about how one who kidnaps a fellow Hebrew and sells him as a slave, who basically shanghais a fellow friend, forces them into forced labor. What should happen? Why would a person do that? Why would a person feel like they could own or control the future of another person? Why would we do it? What level of self-will, independent of the Holy One, are we allowing in ourselves for that to happen? And what do we need to do to make sure that is not something that is fostered, allowed, nurtured in our society? These are some of the issues that we faced already. So the same message this time will be present in 5 scenarios. The Holy One will tell us specifically, Lechem ba uviarta hara mikarveka, you are to put away, purge the raw from among you, in these 5 situations in this portion. First one will be found in Deuteronomy 21:21, and that is in connection with instructions as to what should be done when a man and woman, a husband and wife, have a stubborn and rebellious son. Now that's a fascinating discussion. because people will pick and choose this verse a lot of times to say how horrible they think the Torah is, and how it must be, that would mean, if we follow the Torah, I mean we go out stoning some people's rebellious sons. If we didn't like what they did, we just stone them to death. Well, obviously, there's a couple of things wrong with that. First of all, this is a hypothetical situation that's being put forth by Moshe that we're not dealing with. There's not a factual case or controversy. He's just projecting what are the values and what are the issues that we would deal with. Second of all, let's actually read what it says instead of letting them pick and choose and use that language. In chapter 21, it begins with verse 18, the whole story. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son, there are two qualifications just to get us started. Stubborn and rebellious. We could define those, and you should before you get too deep into this, but I won't do it right now. A man is a stubborn and a rebellious son, and then the third factor, who will not shema the voice of his father or the voice of his mother. This is both father and mother are disdained. Not only is stubborn and rebellious, but the father and the mother are disdained by the son, this child involved in this hypothetical situation. So we've got three factors: stubborn, rebellious, and will not shema either the voice of the father or the voice of his mother. Usually one of the children will listen to one or the other of the parents, but in this case neither one. And who, when they have chastened him, in other words, the parents have to have engaged with this process and done what was necessary in forms of discipline and withheld and train this child up right. So that if that's not met, then this whole situation doesn't exist. And then the fourth thing is, when they have chastened him and they still will not heed them, so the chastening has to have been ineffective, and not just every little old foul-mouthed conversation or a disrespectful word. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a long-term, overarching pattern and practice of total dysfunction. And then it says, then his father and his mother are to take hold of him and bring him to the elders of the city, to the gate of his city. Now this is about the parents and who's going to believe who. The parents are going to actually have to say, I'm going to take this child, I'm going to forgo my right to discipline or my opportunities to discipline. I'm going to take this child that the Holy One gave me and give up and say this child is stubborn and rebellious and will not shema and does not heed discipline, and I'm going to give up my right to influence the child and take him to the elders of the city. Now that is not likely to happen, and under what circumstances do you think it's going to happen? It's not every situation. It's not just elders want to go stone kids. That's not what's happening here. And then they will take him to the elders of the city, at the gate of the city, and they shall say to the elders of the city, this is the pronunciation that they must make before any of these other things, the stoning or whatever may take place. They must pronounce in the hearing of the elders that this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not shema our voice, and he is a glutton and a drunkard. Oh, we just added two more of requirements, and they must say this about their own child. They must have had such suffering and such pain over such an extended period of time that they cannot any longer tolerate this, and this is not only a stubborn, rebellious child who won't shema and won't respond to discipline, but who also is a glutton and has no control, no self-control, wants to exercise no self-control, and a drunkard, and is therefore not even in his right mind. Now, if that's what you're saying, it's a little different than what the world thinks this verse may mean. And so it says, if they say these things, then all the men of the city shall stone them to death with stones. Now, I could tell you some things about what the words, the actual Hebrew word mean, that might give you some questions whether that's really what it's talking about or not. But I'm not going to even go there right now. The issue that we're talking about is, why would we disagree with the parents of this child? If the parents of this child have tried and tried and tried, then we must believe that this child would be a harm to our society, an incorrigible way. Now, I'm not suggesting we should do this in today's world because it's illegal, and there's other things. But I would say that this passage is designed to tell us what is in us, what is in the raw that is within us that we need to purge out of ourselves, and then deal with our children And why are our children the way they are? What have we done, and how can we fix that so it doesn't get to this stage? That's the main goal. Also, this same, do not hide yourself. And purge the raw from your midst. It comes in Deuteronomy 22:11. It connects with instructions about a young woman who does not preserve virginity for marriage, who does not control the sexual appetite, who does not value marriage and the husband that she will be given and the family and the household of the covenant that she will be called on to build enough to hold off on her appetites and urges and desires, who will not treat her own body with the respect and her own potential purpose in life and raising children with the proper respect. Now, this is what is wrong with us, that we get all fixated by sexuality and get ourselves in situations where the sexual urge just seems uncontrollable. What is wrong with us? Purge the raw from within your midst. Another one is in connection with Deuteronomy 24:7, in connection with instructions about, Deuteronomy 22:24, in connection with instructions about a man who is found with a girl betrothed to somebody else, and he feels he can do anything he wants to with her. What's wrong with the male? What's wrong with us? What is the raw? Why are we not understanding the way of the king in regard to this, and who this woman, this betrothed girl, is to him and to her father and to her betrothed, and not saying it's our desires or our appetites or our wanting to have this or have that is more important than those other factors. You see how this all works. Well, beloved, I know we haven't gotten very far into the parsha. I wanted to give you these themes. The most important thing I can tell you is, look, in this season of Teshuvah, the season of Elul, before the blowing of the shofar on Yom Teruah, also known as Rosh Hashanah, before the Day of Atonement, when we rehearse the day of our death and appearing before the throne of the Holy One. For all these things, understand we have a kingdom solemn responsibility to purge the raw from within us. Before we turn our eyes to society or to start judging other people for doing things, we need to cleanse our hearts and our mind. We need to develop the king's disciplines as to preventing these things from having operation. We need self-control, self-denial. We need forbearance. We need to learn these things from the Spirit and from the Torah. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We'll see you this time next week.